Have you ever seen someone who never eats? Not because of fasting, not because of sickness, but because something much deeper, much darker, is stopping them? That was the question everyone whispered whenever they saw Naomi. She was different. Not in the way that made people admire her, but in the way that made them uncomfortable. She never ate. Not in school. Not at home. Not at parties. Not even when free food was offered. And people noticed. She thinks she's better than us. The girls in her class would sneer. Maybe she's cursed. The older women in the neighborhood would gossip. Even at home, her father, Mr. Uzoamaka, a strong-willed man who believed in discipline, was furious about it. He often barked at her. Are you trying to disgrace me? Eat your food now! But she never did. She would sit at the dining table, staring at the food in front of her, her mother's warm jollof rice, the rich aroma of fried chicken teasing her nostrils, but she wouldn't take a single bite. She wanted to, but she couldn't. And the worst part? She couldn't tell them why. Even her own mother, Mrs. Uzoamaka, a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes, began to change. She tried being patient at first, but over time, frustration took over. Naomi, you are not a child anymore. This nonsense must stop. Do you want to die? She scolded. Naomi didn't answer. She just looked at her mother with eyes filled with something no one understood, something like fear. Or pain. Then there was Kelvin, her younger brother. He didn't hide his frustration. You're just being dramatic, he would say, rolling his eyes. You just want attention, right? But Naomi never responded. She just smiled. That small, empty smile that made people uneasy. No one understood why Naomi never ate. But if they knew the real reason, they would be terrified. Naomi sat in her room, staring at the ceiling. The same thoughts circled her mind, the same memories she tried to bury deep inside. She clenched her fists. I wish they would just stop asking me to eat. But how could they? It wasn't normal. It wasn't something anyone could understand. Her stomach growled, loud, angry. But she ignored it, just like she always did. Then a knock. Naomi, open this door right now! It was her father. His deep voice echoed through the room. Naomi sat still, heart pounding. Don't make me repeat myself, he barked. Slowly, she stood up and unlocked the door. The moment he stepped in, she could feel his anger. He didn't need to say much. His eyes were enough. Sit down, he ordered. She obeyed. Her mother entered behind him, holding a small bowl covered with a lid. Kelvin stood by the door, arms folded, his face twisted in irritation. Naomi, this nonsense ends today, her father said, his voice firm. You will eat this food, and we will all sit here and watch you. Naomi's breath hitched. Her mother uncovered the bowl, steaming jollof rice with grilled chicken, fresh and tempting. The smell filled the room. Her stomach twisted, but not from hunger. From fear. Her fingers trembled as she picked up a spoon. Her father nodded in approval. Her mother looked relieved. Kelvin scoffed. Finally. We're tired of your drama. Naomi swallowed hard and brought the spoon to her mouth. But then, a loud crash. Her hand jerked, knocking the bowl off the table. The food splattered across the floor. Everyone froze. Her father's face darkened. What is wrong with you? Tears welled up in her mother's eyes. Kelvin threw his hands in the air. See? She's doing it on purpose. But Naomi wasn't listening. Her breathing was rapid, her vision blurred. Then, she whispered something so low, so broken, that no one caught it at first. Her father frowned. What did you say? Naomi looked up, her lips trembling. I can't eat it. Because if I do, something bad will happen. Silence. Confusion spread across their faces. Her mother leaned closer. What do you mean, Naomi? She shook her head, backing away, eyes wide with panic. I can't tell you. But if I eat, someone will die. And just like that, the room turned ice cold. Her father blinked. What kind of nonsense is that? Her mother gasped. Kelvin groaned. Now you're just making things up. But Naomi wasn't joking. Her body shook, her breath shallow. She meant every word. And deep down she knew, if she ever put food in her mouth, someone she loved would not live to see the next day. The air in the room was thick with tension. Naomi's father took a slow step toward her, his jaw clenched. What kind of foolishness are you saying? Her mother's face was pale, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Naomi, talk to me. What do you mean someone will die if you eat? Naomi's hands trembled as she backed away, her breath coming in short gasps. She wanted to explain. She wanted to make them understand. But how could she? How could she tell them that the last time she ate, someone died? She looked up at her mother's desperate eyes, her father's burning anger, Kelvin's mocking smirk. And just like that, the memories came rushing back. 5 years ago. Naomi was 10 years old. She had always loved food, sweet, spicy, rich meals that filled her belly with warmth. That evening she had sat outside with her grandmother, Mama Ezin, under the old mango tree in their village. The sun was setting, painting the sky in deep orange and purple. Mama Ezin had prepared her favorite dish, pounded yam and egusi soup. Eat, my child, the old woman had said, smiling warmly. Naomi had laughed, dipping a ball of pounded yam into the thick, delicious soup. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. She had eaten and eaten. Until a scream. A loud, piercing scream from inside the house. Her uncle came running out, his face white with shock. Mama Ezin! Come inside, quickly! Naomi and her grandmother had rushed in, only to see Naomi's father standing over the lifeless body of her aunt, Auntie Ifeoma. She had collapsed suddenly, just moments after Naomi had taken her first bite of food. Naomi's hands had turned cold. She could still taste the egusi soup on her tongue. She had looked up at her grandmother, confused. What happened? Mama Ezin's face had changed. Her warm, kind eyes had darkened with something Naomi had never seen before. She had grabbed Naomi's face with shaky hands and whispered, Naomi, did you eat just now? Tears had spilled down Naomi's cheeks as she nodded. And then Mama Ezin said something Naomi would never forget. My child. This is not the first time. Present day. Naomi gasped, gripping her chest as the memory hit her like a wave. Her mother grabbed her arms. What is it? Naomi, talk to us. Naomi looked at her father, her mother, Kelvin, her entire body shaking. I'm cursed, she whispered. Her father frowned. What nonsense! I'm cursed! Naomi screamed this time, stepping back in fear. Every time I eat, someone dies! The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. Kelvin's smirk disappeared. His hands dropped to his sides. Her mother's lips parted, but no words came out. Her father's nostrils flared, his face unreadable. Then silence. Deep, deafening silence. And in that moment, Naomi knew they finally understood. But understanding wasn't enough. Because the real question was, did they believe her? The silence in the room was unbearable. Naomi's father clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. Enough of this nonsense, Naomi! Who put such foolish thoughts in your head? Her mother looked at her with teary eyes. My child, what are you saying? Kelvin, for the first time, was speechless. He shifted uncomfortably. Wait. You're serious? You actually believe this? Naomi wiped her sweaty palms on her dress. I don't just believe it. I know it's true. Her father let out a harsh laugh, shaking his head. This girl has gone mad. Naomi took a shaky breath. 5 years ago, Auntie Ifeoma died right after I ate my food. And it wasn't the first time. Mama Ezin said it had happened before. Even when I was a baby. Her mother gasped, covering her mouth. Kelvin scoffed. So because someone died while you were eating, you think you caused it? What kind of village superstition is that? Naomi's lips trembled. It's not just a coincidence. Her father's patience snapped. He grabbed Naomi by the wrist and dragged her toward the table. Enough! You will eat right now and prove that nothing will happen. No! Please! Naomi struggled, tears streaming down her face. Her mother rushed forward. Chijioke, stop! You're scaring her! But he didn't listen. He shoved Naomi into the chair and pointed at the plate of food. Eat! He ordered. Naomi sobbed. Daddy, please! I don't want to hurt anyone. Her mother knelt beside her, holding her shoulders. Naomi, listen to me. You are not cursed. It's all in your head, my love. Naomi sniffled. Was it? Had she been living in fear for nothing? Kelvin folded his arms. She won't eat. She's just acting. Her father exhaled sharply. If you don't eat willingly, I will force you. Naomi looked at her mother, then at her father. Her trembling hand picked up the spoon. She stared at the food, her vision blurred. This was it. The moment she had dreaded her whole life. She took a deep breath and placed the spoon in her mouth. She chewed, swallowed. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Everyone waited. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3. The room remained silent. Nothing happened. Her father smirked. You see? Foolish girl. Kelvin rolled his eyes. I told you she was just being dramatic. Her mother let out a relieved sigh, hugging her. Oh, Naomi. Thank God. But Naomi wasn't relieved. Something didn't feel right. A strange chill ran down her spine. The hairs on her neck stood up. Then, a loud, blood-curdling scream pierced through the house. Everyone froze. Naomi's heart stopped. The scream came from outside. From the street. Her father frowned. What was that? Kelvin walked to the window and peered out. His face turned pale. Dad? His voice shook. It's Mr. Okafor. He just collapsed. Naomi's breath hitched. Her spoon clattered onto the plate. Her hands turned ice cold. Her mother grabbed her arms. Naomi. No, it's just a coincidence. But Naomi wasn't listening. She pushed her chair back and ran toward the door. Outside, neighbors gathered in a circle. Lying on the ground, lifeless, was Mr. Okafor, their next-door neighbor. The exact moment she swallowed her food, someone had died. Naomi's legs gave out beneath her. Her father, her mother, Kelvin, everyone stared at her, horror etched on their faces. And Naomi knew. It wasn't a coincidence. She was cursed. And now she had proof. A thick silence fell over the street as Naomi knelt beside Mr. Okafor's lifeless body. Her fingers trembled as she reached out, but someone yanked her back. Don't touch him! It was her father. His voice was sharp, filled with something she had never heard from him before, fear. Naomi turned to look at him. His eyes, always stern and commanding, now held a flicker of uncertainty. Her mother clutched her chest, shaking her head. Kelvin stood frozen, his usual arrogance wiped clean from his face. The neighbors whispered among themselves. Some gasped in horror. Others pointed at Naomi. She was eating when it happened. Didn't her aunt die the same way? I heard it's happened before. The words stabbed Naomi's heart. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't move. Because deep down, she knew they were right. She had tried to fight it, tried to believe she was normal. But no matter how much she ran from it, the truth always caught up with her. Every time she ate, someone died. Her mother broke the silence. We need to call an ambulance. She grabbed her husband's arm. Chijioke, do something. But her father wasn't listening. His eyes darted between Naomi and Mr. Okafor, his hands clenched into fists. Kelvin took a step away from Naomi. His face twisted in disgust. This is crazy. This isn't normal. Naomi felt her chest tighten. She wanted to scream that she didn't want this. That she wasn't a monster. But how could she? The evidence was right in front of them. Naomi. Her mother knelt beside her, cupping her face. Her hands were warm, shaking slightly. My love. Listen to me. This is not your fault. Tears burned Naomi's eyes. Then why does it keep happening? Her voice cracked. Why does someone always die when I eat? Her mother had no answer. Neither did her father. Neither did anyone. The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance. The neighbors continued to murmur. Then, a woman's voice rose above the whispers. She's cursed. Everyone turned. It was Mama Ezen, the oldest woman in the neighborhood. She stared at Naomi, her wrinkled face twisted with something between fear and pity. This is not an ordinary thing. Her voice was firm. This child has blood on her hands. Naomi's blood ran cold. Her father took a deep breath and turned to his wife. We need to fix this. Her mother frowned. What are you saying? A prayer house. A deliverance session. Something. His voice was desperate now. This thing. It's not normal, Amara. Kelvin nodded. Finally, something smart. Naomi felt like she was drowning. She had spent years avoiding this moment, convincing herself she was just overthinking. But now, even her own family was looking at her like she was some kind of curse. Tears slid down her cheeks. She turned to her mother. Her last hope. Mama! Please! Her mother hesitated. Then, slowly, she let go of Naomi's hand. Naomi's heart shattered. Her father's voice was final. Pack your things. We leave tomorrow. That night, Naomi lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her stomach was empty. Her heart was too. Because the one thing she had feared the most had come true. She would never be normal. And no one, not even her family, would ever see her the same way again. Dear viewers, sometimes, fear and superstition can consume us, making us believe things that may not be true. But when people we love start believing them too, it can change our lives forever. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping tales like this. What do you think? Was Naomi truly cursed, or was it all just a terrible coincidence? Let's discuss in the comments.